Yo, everybody, welcome back to the #1 TV show in the history of the universe. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart, both books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Okay, today we're going to be reviewing a book by one of my favorite authors of all time. That's Tad Williams, and we're going to be reviewing Shadowmarch, book #1 in his Shadowmarch series, which comprises these 4 books: Shadowmarch, Shadowplay, Shadow Rise, and Shadowheart. I've got the hardcover versions here. I've also got the mass market paperback versions right here. And I've also got all of them on audible.com too. And let's discuss the covers first. These came out, the first one came out in 2004, like 2005, 2006, 2007, something like that. Anyway, the covers are done. All the covers are done by the great, magnificent illustrator Michael Whelan, one of the treasures of the world. Michael Whelan, just great illustrations all the time. Now let's talk about the cover designs, because I think the cover design for book #1 is super dope. I mean, the hardcover, we've got this wonderful Michael Whelan painting. It's a wraparound. We've got this great scene with the great character with on the front, one of our main characters, and then on the back it wraps around and we've got a similar mirroring scene with another one of our main characters. So this is Bryony and this is her brother Beric, and this is Shadowmarch Castle in the background. Now that's just a spectacular cover, well designed. I just love everything about it. Now the mass market paperback, for some reason, they got rid of the characters and just focused more on the castle, which is a great castle painting by Michael Whelan, of course, but it's just a little different. And then also the typeface was at the bottom, which is kind of an odd choice, but they stuck with it. I mean, as you can see, the first book has a little bit of a different design from the following 3 books, and all of them have Michael Whelan paintings. I think those are Michael Whelan paintings. They might be, some of them might, it might be a Todd Lockwood painting or 2 here. I can't remember. Some of them might have been by Todd Lockwood, some of them by Michael Whelan. But then in the mass market paperbacks, they sort of kept them all uniform with just the castle theme throughout. Now the good thing that DAW Books did is when they the spines all match, so they all look pretty good together on your bookshelf. I mean, the spines are pretty close to matching. Anyway, so that's the aesthetics of the book. And you know, I always spend some time on the aesthetics of these books. We'll put them back here like this so they look nice in the video again. Even though I could edit this part out, I won't. You know me, I don't edit shit. Put that back. Okay, now let's talk about the book. It's got a great map. Oh, signed to me. You know, I show off all my signed books. Tad Williams did sign this for me, as he signed most of my collection. It's got a great looking map that Tad Williams drew himself, and it's got a few other little cool little artworks throughout. Now, Tad Williams is a friend of mine for sure. I mean, Tad Williams even gave me a blurb here for my book here. One of my literary heroes is Tad Williams. When I was growing up, his books were my favorite. I've got all of his books up here on this shelf. Well, you know, trust me, they're back here. Let's talk about this book. So, it starts out with a short, about 3-page history prologue of the history of the kingdoms here that we're going to, and the kingdom is Eon. It's E-I-O-N. I don't know how you pronounce that, but it's sort of a brief history of sort of how we got to where we are in the political landscape of this, and just the history overall of the land. Reads a little bit like the Silmarillion, but it's only 3 pages. And then we get another short prologue of about 4 pages, which is very poetic in its writing, very graceful in its writing, and it just sort of describes the geography of the fantasy land that Tad Williams has created. So he's sort of a little trick here with the world building here, where Tad Williams, instead of like layering the world building into the narrative as we go, he sort of just takes about 7 pages to just kind of give us the history of the world and the geography of the world in these 2 little prologues, which are done pretty well and written pretty well, especially the second one, which just has some very, very elegant prose that is laying out the geography. And then we jump into the story where we go right to sort of, I guess they would be our antagonists, sort of the evil Dark Lord type figures of the book. And they are called the Qualnacar. They're sort of like a high-born elf race, sort of like White Walkers. They're not dead. They're just kind of like, they live in the north behind this thing called the Shadow Wall, or it's a misty shadow march. Shadow Line is what it's called, the Shadow Line. But they're just this ethereal, sort of godlike race of very elegant, elvish type creatures. And we get this very short little chapter where there's like this mysterious baby, and then we jump into our main characters and the main thrust and focus and plot of the story, which starts in Southmarch Castle, where we have Bryony, represented here, and her twin brother Beric, represented on the back. And of course, you know, Bryony is of course this beautiful girl. Now Beric, on the other hand, he is her twin, and he's got some physical deformities, and they're out on a starts out with a great scene, great action-packed scene, where we get to know most of the characters that will propel us through the story in this scene. And they're on a wyvern hunt. It's a little dragon. Wyverns, I don't know, it's W-Y-V-R-I-W-N. I don't know. I think it's wyverns, but they're dragon. The way Tad Williams describes them is they're kind of smallish dragons, and they're on a hunt, sort of like the old kings in England would go on a boar hunt and take a bunch of people out with them, riding their horses through the trees to hunt these boars. It's similar, but they're hunting these small dragons. And what happens is, on this hunt, their older brother, Bryony's and Beric's older brother, is injured on the hunt. And then certain things happened while he's injured. We'll get into that in a second. This scene is also kind of interspersed with another scene between these other characters called Chert and Opal. Now, Chert and Opal are, I would say, dwarfs or hobbits that inhabit this world, and they also live in Shadowmarch. They're sort of like, they just kind of workers in and about Shadowmarch, and they are also out sort of on a little walkabout of their own outside of the castle, and they run into like this shadowy, mysterious rider who comes out of the mist, because this mist, this shadow line, is sort of slowly creeping up on the castle Shadowmarch, and the shadowy rider sort of comes out of there, and then the next thing you know, there's like a mysterious young boy who I think ties back to the original baby that we got in one of the prologues. All of this kind of stuff I'm talking about happens in the first 50 pages, so I'm not spoiling anything. But what happens is the wyvern hunt happens. Bryony and Beric's older brother is injured. He's eventually kind of assassinated. A character that is blamed for the assassination, a character named Sasho, is blamed for the assassination, thrown into prison. Bryony is suddenly finds that she is now betrothed to someone she does not want to be betrothed to. There's one of the castle guards named Vanson, who sort of is protective of the family, as was Sasho. Now, Sasho was blamed for the assassination of their older brother, and then Vanson and Bryony and Beric, they kind of don't really think that Sasho did it. Things spiral out of control. That's all the plot I'm going to get into there. There's another side plot that takes place down in the south. Like, this all takes place in the north. There's another plot that takes place down in the southern kingdoms involving a young girl named Quinitan, and she is living down in the southern kingdoms in this vast, huge estate castle type of thing. That's where we learn, and in her storyline, we kind of learn that this might not be a medieval fantasy we're reading, but more of a sort of a Victorian age fantasy that involves muskets and cannons, because then we get the introduction of these weaponry in her story. And so now our perception of the world has changed a little bit, is we're not just dealing with sword and sorcery, we're dealing with a little bit of technology. And Yazamel is the queen of the Qualnakar, the north anyway. And this mysterious northern race, they are sort of bred for war, and they are just itching to, like the White Walkers in Game of Thrones, they are just itching to come out of the shadow line and take back whatever lands where they need to take back. So all of this is written in the beautiful writing that we expect from Tad Williams, the beautiful prose. There's a sense of atmosphere. The scenes are written vividly. The action scenes are written crisply and clearly, and they're exciting. The slower paced scenes where characters are just kind of meandering through this world, dealing with the different daily tasks that they deal with, those are just engagingly written. There's a vast cast of characters in this book, much like his Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. There's so much characters, and above and beyond all else, this is a mystery novel set in a big epic, crazily beautifully built fantasy world that's similar a little bit to the Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn books, but vastly different also. Just an absolutely wonderfully written book. I really enjoyed rereading this. I haven't read this series. I've probably read each book twice, whereas Memory and Sorrow and Thorn series I've reread like 10 times, if not more. So this is about my third reread through these books, and I actually really just enjoyed it. Just one of the most perfect books to just sit next to on a cold day when you just bundled up in your house next to the fireplace or something. This is the perfect book to read. I give it a 10 out of 10. Memory and Sorrow and Thorn series better to me, and they're also 10s out of 10s, and I like them more than this, but this is still, in the genre of fantasy fiction, this is still just top tier, absolutely top tier. Writing, storytelling, and everything. 10 out of 10 for Shadowmarch. Again, Tad Williams, one of my favorite writers of all times. And there you go.